More on that now. Matthew Parks is the Parliamentary Officer for Cosatu, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, in our Parliamentary studios tonight. Matthew, good evening. Thank you for your time. Let's start with that workers' rally in Marikana. You're going to be involved in arranging that. We all remember what happened there in 2012, how many AMCU members died. To an extent, that was partly because of the rivalry with your member, the National Union of Mine Workers. Why do you want to hold a workers' rally in Marikana now?
Look, our job as Cosatu and our affiliate, the National Union of Mine Workers, is to recruit workers to campaign for their rights, their conditions of working. We have members at Marikana. We've had members there for decades. It's part of our normal servicing our members. And I think we all acknowledge that Marikana is a painful chapter in our history. We want to see the recommendations of the Marikana Commission being implemented in full, including the long delayed payment of settlements of compensation to the deceased families. But look, it doesn't just include those mine workers who were killed on that day, the 34 mine workers. It also includes other mine workers who were killed in the build-up to it. It includes security guards who were butchered by AMCU members. It includes police officers who were murdered when they went to investigate. And even after that, the violence at our mines has continued. This year, we've seen 40 mine workers being assassinated, NUM members at Marikana and other mines. We need to see the police pull up the socks to investigate, to find the perpetrators, to arrest them and send them to prison. We can't afford to have no-go areas 25 years into democracy. The government must enforce the rule of law, and in particular, the Department of Labour must not be bullied by AMCU. The Labour Relations Act requires all trade unions to abide by their constitutions, to have democratic elective congresses, to submit audited financial statements, etc. AMCU has not done that for almost 10 years. The Department of Labour must enforce that. The police must enforce the rule of law, no matter who breaks it. And we want to see that rule of law being applied at Marikana and at all mines across the country.
I appreciate that you have a constitutional right to organise at Marikana, but will the people of Marikana see it in a different way? Won't it be seen as a provocation by Cosatu and the NUM?
No, look, we have members there at Marikana today, thousands of members. They're demanding that Cosatu and NUM not be bullied by AMCU, that they go and protect those members. We have had many AMCU members actually, in fact, resigning from AMCU because of the warlord tendencies of Matunjwa and his leadership, who want to come back to NUM. And when they do that, they're assassinated in Marikana itself, in the informal areas, in the hostels. So they're demanding that they be protected. They don't want to be bullied for exercising their rights. Over the past few weeks, we've had AMCU members come into Cosatu head office begging to be protected and saying that we must show leadership and we must protect their rights to join whomever they want to join. It can't be that AMCU can be allowed to bully other unions, not just in NUM, but on Solidarity and so on. AMCU must accept that we live in a democracy, we must work together. Just like you'll find, for example, that NUM and NUMSA and Solidarity work together at Eskom in the mines, that SATAWU and NUMSA work together in the bus driver strike. We must be able to find each other, and this is part of building workers' unity. We can't allow ourselves to be bullied by some traditional leaders who want to behave like modern warlords.
This week, the Employment Equity Commission released its report on the state of transformation in corporate South Africa. I don't need to remind you, as Cosatu, the vast majority, nearly 2/3 of top management positions are held by white people. Is this a failure to transform by corporate South Africa?
No, indeed. It's a wake-up call to all of us in government, in the unions, the private sector. It was actually quite shocking and sobering to see how little progress we made in terms of transforming, in terms of employment equity. We would really want to see business coming to the party now. Busa, Sipho Puchan, and many other business leaders run around the country fighting against corruption correctly. We want to see them come to the party now and also show that they can contribute towards nation building. Because we can't afford this kind of stats that show that 70% of private sector management are held by white men, etc. We need it to reflect our non-racial democracy. It can't just be government which champions employment equity or the unions. The private sector must also come to the party.
All right. The phrase that Cosatu used, it's in your statement, it was in the package that we saw a few moments ago around the public protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mqabane. You used this phrase in your statement, so it's clearly deliberate, a political stench around the office of the public protector. Do you believe then that Parliament should be removing her? Is that what you're saying?
Look, I think a couple of points. One is it's not a question of our personal opinions. Courts after court, high courts, the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Court, time and again, almost a dozen cases have found her to be wanting. They found her judgments to be ill-advised, to be unconstitutional, to be a waste of taxpayers' money, time and again. She's creating a crisis. It's very clear that she's playing into a factional politics of the ANC. She's seeking to undermine the president for some things which are really not within her domain, such as political party fundraising. That's not within her domain. It's unfortunate she's really put us into a crisis. So we would welcome Parliament exercising its role of oversight. It's correct that Parliament looks at developing the rules to hold the public protector accountable. And it's actually quite shocking and unbelievable that she's even sought to bully Parliament not to doing its own constitutional oversight functions. It's unfortunate she is really dragging the Public Protector's Office into the mud and deviating from what it should be doing, which is holding the state accountable on behalf of the public. And I think it was appropriate that the ANC in Parliament said she is now forcing government to budget for incompetence because she's appealing all these court judgments against her time and again, wasting millions of taxpayers' money. And she doesn't seem to be willing to learn the lessons when the courts are saying she must now pay personal costs. And a court won't do that lightly, especially the Constitutional Court. It's time she learns the lessons and stop engaging in factional battles of the ANC.
Do you believe then she should be removed? Is that what you're saying?
Well, look, Cosatu hasn't come to the decision that she should be removed, but we're keen to see Parliament play its oversight role and hold her accountable. And if they feel that she must be removed, that'll be Parliament's right to make such a decision.
That's a very nuanced position for a union movement. The Ramaphosa emails about who donated money to his campaign. I mean, there's this great clip from one of your leaders, I think it was Mike Mangena, saying that sometimes you have to take funding from your class enemies. Nikki Oppenheimer, it seems, is someone who donated money to the CR17 campaign, the President Cyril Ramaphosa's ANC leadership campaign. I mean, he's not just a class enemy. I mean, he's, the biggest class enemy Cosatu could have. Is it right that someone you supported should take so much money from one of the richest men in the country?
Look, I think the CR17 campaign wasn't just about electing the president of the ANC. It is about saving the country. We were on the verge of a very dangerous precipice of a captured state, of a corrupt president, collapsing SOEs, etc. It is about saving the nation, not just the ANC. Parties take money. You need to have money to have campaigns. To organize branch meetings of the ANC is not free. You have to pay for venues. You must pay for transport for elderly citizens. You must pay for food. Sometimes branches even slaughter cattle or sheep. You must pay for money to inform the community, etc. It's not easy things. It's not just the ANC which has to fundraise for these things. When Mmusi Maimane had his DA leadership campaign, he also fundraised. What is important is that it wasn't state money that was used. It was ordinary citizens, whether they are rich or poor, donating of their own volition to see the success of the CR17 campaign. As Cosatu, we had ourselves contributed money and we had received money. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's within the law. There's nothing illegal about it. It's bizarre that the public protector is now focusing on private money used for private purposes. She's not bothered to look at the DA or any other party, the EFF, etc. She's not bothered to look at other candidates of the ANC. For us, it's a clear campaign to distract the president. We need the president to focus on cleaning up the state, on saving the SOEs, growing the economy, creating jobs, instead of being distracted by insignificant palace politics, factional battles.
Okay, I deliberately kept the Treasury's economic proposals that were published on Tuesday night until the end of this interview, because I know, Matthew, once you and I start, we won't stop. But firstly, the fact that Finance Minister Tito Mboweni just went ahead and published this document, put it on the National Treasury website, was he wrong to do that? Is the Finance Minister allowed to say, let's discuss these proposals?
Sure, if we lived in some kind of tin-pot dictatorship, sure, you could have politicians behaving like unguarded missiles, but the fact is we're a democracy, we have a collective state. It's extremely alarming and worrying that Treasury can release such an important document at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. It has not gone through Cabinet, it has not been received the inputs of the other departments. For us, it's extremely worrying that it's some kind of shot in the dark, unguided missile. The most worrying part to it is also that it seeks to exempt small companies from paying workers the minimum wage or sectoral determinations. It seeks to exempt companies from labor relations obligations. We're not sure how will you grow the economy by paying workers a poverty wage. Against ANC policy, it calls for basically the backdoor privatization of ESCOM. Again, against the ANC policy, against the president's commitments. It's a very weird, incoherent, rambling document. It says, for example, the fuel price is too high, it's stifling the economy. We agree with that. Yet it doesn't speak to how those kind of interventions be dealt with. It speaks to the crisis in public transport, provides no plans to how are you going to save PRASA. The most critical threats facing the economy right now are the ballooning levels of corruption in the state, wasteful expenditure, declining revenues to the state, the possible collapse of the state-owned enterprises. The document does not speak to that. And those are government's number one tasks.
Matthew, I mean, you say all of that, and I accept the point about democracy and policy making, but isn't it the case that you as Cosatu have been involved in all sorts of other measures and other big policy conversations within the alliance and outside the alliance and in the ANC and outside the ANC to grow the economy? And frankly, none of it's worked. I mean, isn't it the time for someone to do something? And surely it should be the finance minister.
Look, we welcome any proposals, whoever it's from, whether it's from the Minister of Finance or from business, we welcome them. We welcome the need for engagement. But you have to go through it in the correct process. So we had a very progressive, critical presidential jobs and investment summits last year with progressive commitments made by all parties, government, business, labour. The President recently established a three-a-side task team of labour, business and government to implement those commitments. They're meeting the first Monday of every month. They're discussing the very same things that the Treasury document are talking about. So you can't have government operating in some kind of incoherent fashion. We're talking on the one hand, on the other hand, there's a minister operating by himself in another corner. We need to work together as government, business and labour. We don't have much time. We need to get things moving. But we can't have this kind of policy instability from one minister who basically operates like a bull in a china shop, undermining the collective social dialogue we desperately need between government, business and labour.
So are you, as Cosatu, then going to fight against these plans? Are you going to try and stop them from being implemented?
Look, we want to have a proper discussion. Many of the issues we welcome the discussions for. For example, we agree that the fuel price, the electricity tariffs are strangling the economy. We want to have the proper discussion. We want to have a plan to discuss how to save the SOEs. Unfortunately, this strategy doesn't provide those kind of plans. The way it's developed and been released just adds unnecessary distractions. So our focus is to continue to engage with the President with the economic clusters of not just finance, but also trade and industry, public enterprises, labour and so on. We're going to do that through NEDLAC. We're having a meeting on Monday with the President. We want to get things moving. We don't believe we have much time left. The October budget statement is around the corner. We need to get our act together with clear plans on the table by November, when the next rating agency's review is done by Moody's. So we need to get moving, but we need to do it in a collective, systematic way. We can't be operating in silos and 11 o'clock press releases by the Minister of Finance.
It wasn't 11, it was around 6:30. I remember being on shift here at the time, but I appreciate the point that you make. Matthew Parks, thank you very much indeed, the Parliamentary Officer for the Congress of South African Trade Unions in our Parliamentary studio. I do appreciate the time tonight.